AI wrote the
Yes.
code, and then AI is the one that's reviewing the code, and then AI is the one that's writing the tests. There's no human, there's no human in the loop. Principle of software engineering have become even more important today. That person is Kenzie Dodds. One of the biggest things that I learned from him is how to approach learning a new topic.
If you like this content, please smash that like button and also subscribe, because this will help grow my channel and also help me to reach out to amazing guests in the future. Today's guest is someone who has spent over a decade building products that millions of people use every day at companies like PayPal and Slack, where she rose to staff engineer and even holds a pending patent for her work. In 2025, she made a bold move. She left big tech to become a full-time educator and content creator, and the developer community has shown up for her. She has now 42k YouTube subscribers, 4k plus newsletter readers on Substack, and has also over 1,600 mentorship sessions booked, making her a top 1% mentor on TopMate. On the speaking circuit, she graces the stages of React Conference, React Summit, Epic Web Conf, Cascadia JS, and many more. And most recently hosted the React team at Meta Q&A at React Conference 2025. She is also an instructor on Egghead and O'Reilly. Welcome, Shruti, to my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Sachin. Thank you for this warm intro. I never knew this is all I accomplished, but it feels so nice to hear all this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Even when I did last time with Santosh, he was also very surprised to know the facts. He was like, okay, the video has reached 2 million views. Last time I knew was 1 million. So good to know.
Yes.
I am definitely going to share this with you later so then you can maybe, have it for you.
Yes, I'll get it printed in here.
2026. Yes. Okay, so you studied computer engineering, worked
Mhm.
at PayPal and then Slack. At what point did you realize you just didn't want to write code, you wanted to teach it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like my move to become a content creator has more been about helping more teams than just the one that I was specifically working on. So I'm still writing code a lot. One of the things that I always struggled with is that I love software engineering. I love writing code. I love building products. So that has what kept me in this field for a long time. I was never able to give that up. I'm still writing a lot of code, so I'm glad that I can still hold on to that. But one of the biggest things was the stability of having a 9 to 5 job and knowing where your next paycheck is coming from. And as we can all relate with that, like making sure that you are getting paid every week or every other week is so important. So I think that was the biggest reason that held me back from going full time into independent content creation. I think what actually drove me was towards the end, I started realizing that the more I was job searching, the more I was looking for teams that would allow me to do what I wanted to do in their teams. So what I really wanted to do was a mixture of software engineering, traditional, which is writing code, building features, and then developer advocacy, which is making videos, writing blogs, going to conferences, building demos,
Right.
helping people understand what the product I built is. I was lucky enough that my role at PayPal involved that, but not a lot of teams have the flexibility to do that. Even at PayPal, I worked in 3 different teams, and only one team was able to kind of have my role in such a way that I could do both of them at the same time. And the more
Okay.
senior I get and the more years I spend in this industry, I realized that I just keep looking for the same thing over and over again. And after 6 years of speaking at conferences and writing blogs and making videos, I was like, if I don't take this step right now, I'm always going to be looking for permission to really do the thing that I want to do. And I have enough saved up right now so that even if I don't know where my paycheck is coming from next month, I can still survive. So I was like, all right,
Okay.
I'm still going to build, I'm still going to make videos, but I'm not going to take anybody's permission. So let's go independent.
Okay, great one. When I was planning to ask this question, I was also trying to check if there is any video on this where you spoke about it, but I couldn't see. You had only spoken about your life as a developer, but not as a content creator.
Yeah.
But one thing that popped up interestingly was you asking the same question to Kenzie Dodge about this, why he wanted to be an independent creator. So is he your inspiration when you started this for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like when I met Kenzie Dodds, I'd known about him for a long time, but I actually met him online when I joined PayPal. He was actually at
Okay.
PayPal when I joined. And I sent him a message, and he was very nice and very warm.
Hmm.
And he welcomed me to PayPal. And I told him one of the reasons I joined PayPal was because he was at PayPal. So he was very sweet
Yes.
and very kind and
Hmm.
welcoming. And then I saw how he was contributing to the community at PayPal, but also how he
Hmm.
was building his own resources outside of PayPal. And his blog and his website were already doing really well, and his courses were doing really well. And when he left PayPal, that was actually a bit of shock to me because I was like, wow, you're leaving such an established job, such an established paycheck for something that is like unstable, you would say. In his case, it was still a lot more stable because he had steady income coming, but I was really shocked to see that. So I had not known anybody who had done this before. So he was one of the first people to kind of lead the path. And then ever since then, I have seen so many other creators like Jason Lengstorff also do similar things where they've left 9 to 5 job and actually started their own thing. And they're extremely happy and extremely satisfied. So I feel really blessed that I'm not the first one starting out in this field like this, and there have been
Right.
creators who have kind of led the path. So yeah, Kent was one of the first people who inspired me. You were also talking about that I haven't really spoken about this content creation journey, which I'm happy to share that there's a video coming out this week. So by the time this episode goes
Awesome.
live, that video will probably be live as well. So I'm excited to share that. It's
Yeah.
actually been a year almost that I left my 9 to 5, and that video is
Hmm.
a reflection of how that last year has went.
Awesome. So I guess my question was right on time.
Yes, perfect timing.
Thanks. I guess also one of the first time I saw you or started following was when you were in a conference with Kenzie Dodds, Bob Cirol, and you guys were all together. I don't know. I guess you get to stay in a hotel sponsored by the conference, and yeah, it was a fun made video made by you, I believe. You had put everything together like a nice small video, like a short video, and yes,
I can't remember which conference that was, but yeah, like that's a general idea. Like, I think it was probably Epic WebConf, where I put together like behind the scenes of Epic WebConf,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah, that
I
was,
think so.
yeah, I think that was
Because there are
last
so many
year.
conferences happening, so it's hard to like, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was last year. Yeah. So the conference hotel is usually sponsored by the conference. The
Hmm.
accommodation, the flight to the hotel is also sponsored by the conference as well.
Okay, good. So glad to hear about your journey and also about Kenzie Dodds. Even I follow him very closely, very down to earth person. From the tweets and the responses, you can feel like how good of a person he is.
Yeah.
Yes, let's get into your expertise. You made a lot of video on React 19 or you spoke in different conferences and interviews, right? So, what's the React 19 feature most developers will ignore and then regret ignoring 2 years from now?
So, okay, I think 2 years is a long time. So, I don't know about 2 years. But one of the features that I think you should definitely pay attention to is performance tracks in React 19.
Yes.
Performance tracks is actually part of the developer console or the developer view in Chrome. So when you open your inspector developer console, you'll see there's a bunch of, when you start recording your feature, you'll see there's a bunch of like graphs, like flame graphs that come up. One of them is a new feature that's been added by React 19 team, which is performance tracks. And that actually helps you understand how long a component is spending in which phase. And that is extremely important for debugging because you can know like I spent 20 seconds rendering, or I spent this much time in commit phase, or my process was just sitting idle. So when you're looking to understand why your app is slow or why a component is taking too long to render, you can actually look at those performance tracks and understand. Now, there is nothing you need to do to set those up. It's automatically given to you out of the box, but it is not part of the typical like profiler or component tab that you'll typically use React DevTools in. It's part of the actual Google Chrome's developer performance tracks. So it's a custom performance track that React 19 has added. It can take a little bit of while to actually find it, but I have a video on how to find React performance tracks and how to deep dive into performance and see which component is spending on what time. I'll share that video as well, so maybe you can link it in the show comments.
Sure.
But that performance tracks is extremely important in figuring out the view of your app, and it gives you a much more detailed view into component rendering lifecycle as opposed to profiler. So highly recommend checking it out. It's not a hook. It's not as fancy as like other
Yes.
React updates, but it's extremely important.
Yes, I saw this actually also on your video. I guess it takes like a couple of clicks and a bit of zooming to see how much, how much every time you click something or when the component was mounted, you had to do a bit of digging
Yeah.
to, yeah, really understand the stats there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you able to really optimize the component? Because most of the things are so fast and you need to like throttle the network to see how much it
Yeah.
is affecting. But did you personally use it and make your component even faster, or
Yeah.
were you able to solve some of this issue?
Yeah, so one of the things that I actually looked at was in one of my videos, I show how to optimize the performance of your React app, and I show you how to do that with
Yes.
a YouTube example. So, like, you have it's kind of like a Netflix example more than a YouTube. So, you have a bunch of videos loading, and then you're waiting for content to show up, or you're waiting for like a modal to pop up. So, how does that content flow, and how long it takes for that component to render? So what happens is you clicked on a component and then you're waiting for that data to come in from an API, and then your app or your component is just waiting for that data to load before it can render the new component. So by looking at the performance track, you can see that it's just like waiting in the render phase. And then you can understand like why is it waiting in that render phase? Because that data is not here yet. So why is that data not here yet? Because I'm making a client-side call. How can you fix that? You can fix that by actually prefetching data, either that or you can fetch it on the server side so that when your component loads, it's actually ready to go. So those are two ways I actually was able to optimize the performance of an app or that specific component by looking at how long it's spending in what phase.
Okay, awesome. That's like a real use case, right? Making use of the tool and also fixing something.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And even I was actually doing a live stream last week, and I was looking at somebody else's app to see what is the performance of this app. Now, in the production app, you don't see performance tracks, so you won't be able to know. But in the development cycle, you'll see that the app was waiting a long time for API to come back, and it was just waiting a long time. It was spending a lot of time in idle. But even when the data came back, the render phase took so long. So now you can understand like why is it taking this long to render, and then you can dig deep into the component to find out. So it's been super helpful in actually figuring out exactly which component to pay attention to.
Okay, good one. Performance tracks. We'll keep in mind. And one more thing that I also remember you saying one of the important features, right? The React compiler. And you said it's a plugin that has to be installed separately. And the benefits of React compiler being you can replace a lot of use callback hooks and use memo and memo, right? So does people know out of the box when they are migrating from 18 to 19? I guess like the support for React 18, last stable version was React 18.3.1, and the support ended in 2024, I guess. But I am not sure if everybody are on React 19 yet, because I also remember you saying like when you were in Slack, they were using React 16 and you were giving conference talks for 18 or 19. So,
Yeah.
so how do you think like people also aware that that this has to be separately installed for a React compiler in 19
Yeah.
to get the benefits of React compiler?
Yeah, I mean, it actually is mentioned in the docs that React Compiler comes as a separate plugin, and it's actually very easy to set up. It's literally just like one line of npm install. It's a Babel plugin. It gets installed, and then it's like good to go. You don't need to do anything else. So it's very easy to set up. It's also mentioned in the docs, so hopefully people are aware when they read the docs that it's actually a separate plugin. It doesn't come as part of the package, which was kind of confusing because I think in the conference it is talked about a lot, so it could be confusing. But yeah, it's a separate plugin. It doesn't come automatically out of React 19. It is supported in React 18 as well. So I think 18.3 is the version where it's supported as well. So if you have 18.3 or higher, you can still install React Compiler.
Okay, good to know. So getting to the next one, which is about accessibility. I remember you saying that when you worked in Slack, you moved from huddles and clips team to the accessibility team. And you had also mentioned that you had to fix accessibility issues which you thought you could do in 1 or 2 weeks, and that ended up going for a month, right? So most developers think accessibility is kind of a checklist, like adding area labels and making sure it works with keyboard. But it's more than that. You also additionally mentioned about visual and cognitive problems. So what did a month of deep accessibility work teach you that completely blew that assumption apart?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we think about when we think about accessibility is I have this component and I just need to add like ARIA label to it. I'll add some ARIA attributes and then that's it. Like it'll be accessible. But the thing is, accessibility is a lot more about the user experience of using a keyboard without using your trackpad, right? So imagine that, think about huddles or like think about like a grid. So huddles is a grid, right? So think about if you're using that huddles, you have 20 people in a huddle and you want to open the name or you want to inspect who is the 18th person in the call, right? You can see their face, but you don't know who they are. So think about how you're going to do that. If you're using just a keyboard, you're going to have to like tab through 18 different people to get to that person. And that is a poor experience, right? Right. Typically, when we think about accessibility, we're just like, oh, I'm just going to add an attribute and maybe I'll just put tab index and then I'm done. If you were just putting a tab index, you would have to go through 18 different tabs to get to that 19th person. And I'm just saying 19. It could be like 100 people, right? So imagine the user experience, right? That a person who's using keyboard has to go through to actually access your component. And that is the biggest part about accessibility that we skip. The user experience behind the components, the user experience of that component. So what actually we could rather do instead of having to click 18 times is being able to give like a up and down arrow navigation. So you see it's a grid and you see it's maybe like the 4th item in the grid and it's on the 5th column. So you can use your arrow keys to navigate down to that component instead of hitting like 18 times. So now you probably have to hit your keyboard like only 4 to 5 times instead of 18 different times. And it's a much better user experience. Right? So that is the biggest thing we miss about accessibility is actually thinking from a user's perspective, what would make their experience better instead of just slapping like tab index and just calling it a day. Because technically, like in terms of requirements, technically it is accessible if you just put tab index, but it is a poor user experience. And we value user experience a lot in front-end development.
Right. I mean, like when people think of accessibility as well, right? The developers, I don't know if everybody are really using some kind of screen readers and other accessibility tools to really be like the person who is using it, right? Maybe it's a disabled person. So I don't think people are doing that kind of a real test to see how it goes in their perspective. So maybe that's one of the reasons they're just like, washing their hands later just by adding area labels or area live attributes, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but did you have like kind of perspective, or did you run through all this softwares by yourself when you had to design this accessibility or fix these issues?
Yeah, I mean, Screen Reader is definitely one of the must-use tools in accessibility. There's other tools as well that test the code of your accessibility of your component. So they let you know when you shouldn't be using, like what semantic errors your component have. And an example is Axe tools. There's also plugins as well, ESLint plugins as well that will help you understand those. But I think the biggest learning actually comes from user testing and sharing your component with somebody who actually uses assistive technologies every single day to navigate the
Yes.
component. Because then you
Yes.
really know that your component is like maybe accessible from a requirements perspective, but it's not a great user experience. And that is the most important thing that I think most devs are missing. Most teams are missing actually. User testing with an actual person who uses assistive technologies every day is extremely important. And I think that's what makes Slack's tools so much better than other tools, because we actually test. I say we, it's been a year, but Slack actually tests with real people.
Okay. So that's great, right? Even like it's just like peer review or anything. The
Yeah.
developer's eyes does not catch the problem until it's like pointed out by someone. So when you're
Yeah.
really having people who are really using these tools, then yes,
Yeah.
that's a
And
good way to test it.
yeah, and like some examples, even with using screen reader, is that you have a label, and the label may be something as simple as, like, for example, here's a button which is like call end button. The label could
Yes.
be like end call, right? And that
Hmm.
may make sense to you as a developer, but when somebody who's using that assistive technology reads this, they can tell you whether this really makes sense in the context of every other button, right? So they can really give you the correct feedback on whether that label makes sense or not. So even if it's an ARIA label, even if that's all you're doing, it's extremely important to get it tested with the real user.
Okay. Good to know. And one more thing you mentioned was the cognitive overload. Is that something that you had to also take care, or was it all also part of the DX developer experience that you mentioned?
Yeah, so cognitive overload basically means that when you are showing something to the user, how much of that information is kind of being passed in as spam, right? Like not as spam, but like how much of that information is being bombarded to the user without actually giving them the real crux of the information that you want to give. How are you delivering your point? So for example, in Slack, imagine that you are in the navigation, in like the messaging pane, where you have like thousands of messages before your text, right? So when you start scrolling, how do you show that information, or how do you read that information aloud to the user? So if you start scrolling, if you just start reading all of the messages one by one without stopping, that is cognitive overload, because the user
Yes.
doesn't have time to process a message before moving on to the other message. So what is the user experience behind it you can build so that you reduce the amount of content that you bombard to the user and deliver just the point that you want to deliver, which is you have 1,000 older messages, and then you can click on something, or you can hit the button on something, and then you can read more of those messages. And so you can like progressively reveal content instead of just like throwing it in their face and just hoping that they understand. So that's how you reduce
Yes.
cognitive overload.
Okay, good one. I also asked this question last time to a different guest on accessibility. So, would you also fix all the accessibility problems with the AI?
Oh, that's a great question. So AI is really good at like the semantic of accessibility. So it can tell you like you need an ARIA attribute here. So it's really good at figuring those out. And again, those are code issues that you can have from Axe tools as well. You can fix those, but it's not very good at the user experience part that I was telling about. And it's also not very good at actually using a keyboard navigation to actually figure out which parts of your app need a keyboard tab, or need to have a
Yes.
tab index. That kind of stuff you have to do manually only. Accessibility will get you part way there, but then the same thing with other tools as well. You still have to do manual testing.
Yes. Even AI can make mistakes, right? And they do make a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I also saw is like some kind of model pops up on your screen, and when you close it, and then the focus goes on some random link and all those things.
Yeah. AI doesn't know any of that. So it's just like
Yes.
lost. Keyboard focus getting lost is one of the biggest accessibility bugs ever. I spent
Okay.
so much time. I think 8 out of 10 bugs that I worked on were keyboard focus bugs,
Okay.
like focus navigation bugs. So yes, it is very hard to do those, and AI has no idea. AI is just like, I don't know. You closed the modal. Now go figure wherever your focus is.
Okay. So maybe after this podcast, it gets smarter, you know. It tells, okay, Shruti Kapoor mentioned this in a podcast.
Maybe I need to make more videos and more like written content so it can actually start crawling and being like, okay, this is important.
Yes. Okay. Next is an interesting segment, which is AI in development. So, how do you think junior developers should approach AI-based development? What do you think one do and don't? Because
Hmm.
when I literally go to Reddit, there is so much negativity, and I hardly see some positivity. And
Hmm.
I really don't know, like starting from 2026, 25, maybe some parents in India or who want their kids to choose their path in computer science or whatever around the world as well. Maybe people are also giving up, right? Maybe thinking computer science is
Yeah.
no more. So, what do you think about
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that AI has helped us do is implement the things that we have in our head and bring it into code form much faster. So it is a great tool for putting your thoughts into code. But people sometimes think, well, if I can just use AI to do everything, why do I have to learn the thing? An example could be like a backend developer trying to build a front end site, and they'll be like, well, I can just prompt AI to actually build the UI for me. Why do I need to learn front end development? Why do I need to learn React? And I've heard that a lot from backend
Yes.
developers, and I'm sure front end developers feel the same way. Like, why do I need to learn Node.js, or why do I need to learn Python if I can just let AI write the code for me? It is really good at writing code, but it's not good at writing correct code. So, how do you know that the stuff that you're writing is correct, up to standards, or even scalable or maintainable? I have seen so many times when AI writes code, even for a simple component like a search input component, that code is technically workable, it works, but it is bad code. It is not even React, but it's written in React JSX components. So it is not a good practice of actually writing those code. That's just an example. But what I'm trying to say is you can use AI to build your features faster, but make sure that the stuff that AI is writing is stuff that you understand. Why? Because one, you don't know if it's the best written code, not even best, even if it's good code, you don't know if that is correct code. And tomorrow, if something goes down, who's going to fix that? So it's extremely important that you use AI as a tool, as an assistant, rather than the main engineer. You're still the engineer. You still have to review every code that AI writes and make sure that it is up to practice. It is up to best standards. One more thing that I would say is you can use AI as a learning tool. So if you want to build a backend component and you've never built that, so you can use AI to actually build that, but then make sure that you take time to understand what it wrote and then actually spend the time to learn those features as well. So use AI as a teacher, verify what it writes, but at the same time, don't use AI as your primary thinking brain. You still have to use your own brain to figure out what is the code that you want to write and if the code that AI wrote is better or poor quality. Now, one thing that people think is like, well, I'm going to use AI to write code, and then I'm going to use AI to review tests, like review code, and then I'm also going to use AI to write my code. So everything is AI. That is the secret to disaster. I've seen so many times, actually, there have been a lot of issues that even big companies are now like getting into. You saw Claude's code got source code got leaked, where AI wrote the
Yes.
code, and then AI is the one that's reviewing the code, and then AI is the one that's writing the tests. There's no human, there's no human in the loop. So there's nobody actually verifying if the code is right and if the review is done properly. And that is extremely disastrous. So make sure that you're still using AI as just an assistant and not your primary brain.
Yes. Like that's a very thoughtful insight there. And one more thing is what I feel when I was coding as well is the cognitive overload. Because when you are developing a feature, you're, you know, the world is like if you go to X, ship fast, right? So people are like shipping features so fast. And I don't really know, like even at some point I get like, okay, take some time to figure this out totally. Okay, skip it. Okay, maybe I'll do it later. Then
Yeah.
skipping becomes a hobby, like long term, right? Anyways, I feel like, okay, Code Rabbit is going to catch me. So maybe I can figure it out there. So this kind also, and so people are also building a lot of apps. Like I was also building the Android app recently, and there is a separate app where I can also get testers, because you need to get it tested with another 12 developers. So I can get to see their apps as well, and I need to test it for 14 days there. And literally it's like called app hive, so they create a hive, and it goes for one hive goes for 14 days. And I've been like checking every other day, like you see new hives happening, and there are a lot of apps coming in, and
Hmm.
another hive and apps are coming in. So what I see is like some are not even like proper developers, or some people are like I don't think like anybody can ship something at such a speed without AI. And
Hmm.
every bugs that you see, it's fixed with AI again. So I don't know like what is the disaster point, right, for them or people who are just building, because yeah, the sensible, I guess it's very important when you're in a company or big company, right? Because that's going to affect them. But people who are like independently shipping a single app, I don't think they are really focusing on any of these things. And I
Hmm.
don't know when their app crashes or what security flaws that's going to expose.
Yeah, and that's
Yes.
the thing, like you don't know until you actually go through a crash, and then you are figuring out what the hell happened. And because you didn't write
Yes.
any of the code, you don't remember any of the code, it's very hard to figure it out. I think the principle of software engineering have become even more important today, which is learning how to debug your app and learning the principles of scaling and learning how security works within your app, making sure that you're writing maintainable code. Those principles have become even more important today with the help of AI, because AI is now writing garbage code. And if you have no idea what code it is writing, it's becoming really hard to bring your app back into sanity when something has gone wrong.
Yes, that's true. And even when you debug in some of your videos, right, like even you were talking about use effects, so probably people doesn't have knowledge about it, maybe seeing, all this so much dependency array getting bloated, and um, you also spoke a lot about React 19, and probably people who aren't aware of it are still, struggling with a lot of, or doing a lot of use callbacks, and still,
Hmm.
yeah. But I guess this
Yeah.
knowledge is definitely helpful to talk with it and also figure out and
Yeah.
fix things.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. So that being said, what can you also walk me through your coding workflow using AI these
Hmm.
days? I
Yeah.
heard that you're a big fan of Cursor AI. So, and you also revealed a lot of other tools like Claude Code, Copilot. So, how does
Yeah.
they all fit into one workspace?
So the three biggest tools that I'm using now are Claude Code, Code Rabbit for code reviews, and Whisper Flow for skipping typing, which is technically not a coding tool, but it helps to skip typing. So I can just speak instead of having to write. That has actually helped me make my features much faster. But here's the workflow that I use. So first I'll design the component in my head, and this is how I was developing features before as well. I'll design the component in my head and like print out a, like I use paper a lot. So I'll write down like I'll actually make like an architecture of what I want to build. So for example, when I was building the Netflix app, I'll write down the architecture of how I want to build it. And if you're a staff engineer, if you're a senior engineer, this is how you'll build the architecture of the app as well. So the workflow has pretty much stayed the same. So I'll build the architecture, kind of like a rough architecture of how I want to build it. What are the API calls I need? What are some features I need? What is the front end looking like? What is the back end looking like? Then I'll create components in my front end app, and I'll write down like, for example, if it's a Netflix app, I'll have like a home page, I'll have the search bar. So I'll create those components myself. And then at the top of it, I'll write to do, and then I'll write like a descriptive to do using Whisper Flow of what that component should do. So for example, if it's a search component, I'll write like the user needs to, this is a search component where when the user types a movie, a autocomplete feature pops up where the movie's name is given and 5 other movies that match the recommendation are also shown in a drop down list. So I'll kind of describe what the component will look like. And I'm not typing this, I'm just using Whisper to write that. Then I'll use Claude to build that component. So once it has built the component, I'll read the code that it wrote, and only then I'll approve the code. A lot of times I've seen that people will just like approve all, and that's where all the garbage code comes in. And why I'm saying that is because most of the time it'll write good code, but sometimes I've noticed it'll, especially when it comes to like event listeners, in React, it writes really bad code where it is actually writing native HTML instead of using on-click handlers. And same with use effects. I write so many use effects. I don't know why. I don't know which code it is reading, but AI writes so many use effects, and you want to make sure that all of the code that it is writing is actually good code. You don't want so many use effects. I actually made a video on like the 19 common, I think it was 19 common use effect issues that people often have in their code. And when you write code with React and AI, so much of it is just bad use effects. So you want to make sure that you don't have those. So once I write my code with Claude, I'll review it, and then I'll actually use CodeRabbit to review the code as well. What I've noticed is that CodeRabbit will catch like 60 to 70% of issues, but there's some things that it doesn't catch. For example, with use effects, it doesn't know those. Again, it's another review process where I'll review what it wrote, and sometimes it'll catch like attribute things and like HTML things and things like that. And then I'll review those, accept that, and then do another review of actually what the code should have been. So it is still a lot of human in the loop in my process, and that's the way I like to write my code.
Okay, great. As you also spoke about the review process, there's also the skill, right, which got released recently, the Versal's React best practices.
Yeah.
So have you also run them to see like that really fix something when you're
Yeah.
designing a component?
I read their skills doc, and it was actually really good. I haven't actually incorporated that in my Claude code. I honestly totally forgot about it, but I haven't really incorporated them
So much
yet.
thing happening right now.
I know. If I remember correctly, the new Next.js components automatically come. Actually, yes, the new Next.js apps actually already come with skills. So when you're using Claude code, Claude would automatically remember. My YouTube app was pre-skills document, so it didn't review that. But it'd be interesting to see how that performance is doing when skills is already written. But yeah, the skills document is actually really helpful. Especially for React and performance stuff.
Okay. One more thing I forgot to ask is, do you also do any kind of TDD to build your applications?
So I have not been a fan of TDD, even
TDD, okay.
prior AI. And people are going to hate me for this, but I think TDD slows you down. I have never been a fan of TDD,
Okay.
test-driven development, for those who don't know, where you actually write the test first and then you
Yes.
do development. And the reason is that's not how I think. I think in terms of, maybe for backend it'll work better, but in terms of front-end, and I'm a primarily front-end developer, I think in terms of user experience, I think in terms of components, and I think in terms of features. So writing a test for a feature that has been built and making sure that all of my test cases are covered works better for me as opposed to building a feature from the tests.
Yes, I mean, even I started as a front-end developer, and TDD was a hard nut to crack because it's not easy, right? Because that
Yeah.
needs a skill on its own. But yeah, but even if sometimes it's a simple application, you don't need like TDDs and overkill. And but one good thing that I observed was there is a developer called Matt Pocock, if I'm saying it rightly, and he had developed a skill like a TDD skill, and I've been using that a lot lately. Somehow, like making sure the tests are written nice, because I heard it like the other way around is not so good. First writing the code and then writing the test, then
Yeah.
AI is doing a lot of compromises to make the test run. So
Yeah, I mean, I can
yes,
see the benefit of using TDD in an AI development, AI-powered development, or like AI-first development approach for sure, because you have a good baseline to start off from. But the way I start is by writing a plan, like I write a manual plan myself, and I found that to be really helpful as well.
like they call it the spec-driven development these days.
Spec-driven development, yeah. And that's how we build applications within industry as well.
Industry as well.
So at Slack and PayPal, actually at PayPal in one of my teams, we did try TDD and we found that it was actually slowing us down much more. I wasn't a big fan, and then even after Slack as well, TDD hasn't really been the preferred approach of development.
Okay. So just a follow-up here is, have you like locked in any best practices that you wish that developers should adopt in terms of using AI?
Yeah, I think two main things: writing a plan and having a skills doc. Writing a plan is really helpful because so you can write a plan with Claude, or you can have a plan that is manually written. I like to have a manual plan and then enhance it with Claude, your coding tool of choice. And that's because you can put, instead of letting AI run your development cycle, you are now in charge of making sure that all of your features are written and your component is being developed in the way that you want it to, instead of letting AI instead of giving like a blank prompt, which is like write an autocomplete component, you're giving a more detailed prompt, basically. That's what plans really are. So I am a big fan of like plan-driven development, which is also spec-driven development, which is how industry writes code anyway, pre-AI world, and then having a skills doc. And skills doc is really helpful, especially if you are hoping to write a app that is like, for example, React, that has been like, that language has been highly established, and that is something that you are unfamiliar with. So skills really help you learn from best practices that have been already adopted. And it's the same as like having to read a blog post where somebody has written down the best practices and then just like writing code from them. So those two highly important. Thankfully, like with your new Next.js app, skills comes part of Claude development already, so you don't have to do anything. But setting up skills is super easy. You have a skills.md document, you put it in your Claude folder, and then when Claude actually writes code, it'll review that skills files first.
Right, right. And I also observed the Claude code also helps you write a skill code by prompting you, so you don't have to like have real knowledge.
Yeah.
So next is something like regarding atrophy. So how like people are becoming so dependent on AI, right, these days. So how do you make sure that it doesn't reach skill atrophies? For people who don't know, skill atrophy is like where you lose your real skill set. So how can you prevent that? Do you
Yeah.
have some tips here?
Yeah, so I talked a lot about like human in the loop, right? And the reason why people
Mm-hmm.
are forgetting their AI skills is because they're not practicing their skills while they're writing code. And coding is sort of like a muscle. So if you don't practice it, you lose it. So I talked a lot about like how I review code first, I write the plan first, and then I make sure every code that AI is writing is approved by me. And that's how I'm making sure that when I am getting code from AI, it is approved and it is something that I already know. There's a lot of times when AI will write code that I don't know, right? And so what you want to make sure in that case is when something is unknown, you want to take the time to actually read and understand it. And you could like watch tutorials, you could watch videos, you could read books on it, but you definitely want to make sure that the code that is being written is not unknown to you. It could be new to you, but it shouldn't be unknown. And that's how you make sure that you're developing your skills and not just letting AI do all the job and relying on AI skills. An example of this could be like writing front-end code in a back-end app. So if you are building React apps, for example, and like, for example, you asked it to write the most updated React 19 code, and it used something like use action state because it knows that those are new, but you don't know them, and you just let them get added to your app, you gotta take time to actually read up on those. And there's tons of articles and videos and non-AI content available that is there to help you. You could also ask Claude to give you more information about the feature that it wrote and help you understand that. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're verifying that source of information, because sometimes it can just hallucinate and it can give you bullshit answers. I actually like to ask AI to give me sources of information so I can look it up myself. So for example, if it wrote use action state, I will ask it, can you give me like 5 highly recommended resources on use action state? And then I can look it up and ask AI to summarize that. So you're still using it as a tool, but you're not letting it be the primary driver.
Okay. Yes, and the AI, when I see like, can be a boon and curse at the same time, because like it can be a curse when you're totally blind and do things, but like can be a boon because when I did AI assisted coding, I felt like So good because I understood every bit of it,
Hmm.
and you can also ask like so much follow-up questions, and it gives you answers, example, like teaches you in a simple way. You can imagine to be
Hmm.
like any kind of teacher to want to be like creating your custom agent, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that I feel like, you can really make use of it and understand every bit of, because earlier you had to like go through multiple Stack Overflows to understand a real concept properly, right?
Yeah.
To the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah,
felt
that
it
way
that way.
AI is a really great teacher. Like, for example, if you want to learn something about authorization and the blog post can be kind of complicated, you can ask it to kind of break it down to you like you're an 8-year-old or like you're grade
Yes.
8, right? So that way it's really helpful. It's a really great teacher and it's really great at answering follow-ups as well.
Good one. One more thing that I was curious, does the Claude know that you're Shruti Kapoor and you are, a person who is already, who knows a lot about React and who has decade of experience? So is it really careful when it is coming with answers?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like I use Claude a lot to write my weekly newsletters. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it the newsletter a topic, and then like I'll give it the article, and I'll ask it to like create a summary for me, and so it'll be like, oh, it'll be perfect for your newsletter, or being Shruti Kapoor, you can write this and that, and I'm like, thank you, but can you tell me like if my viewers will like it? So yeah, so it definitely knows that I'm Shruti Kapoor, and I was actually asking it to write a resume for me just earlier, and it said, you know all of these skills, and you are a perfect match for this. So I was like, forget about everything you know about me, but just look at my resume and tell me if I'm a match. And then it was like, actually, it may not be a really good match. Then maybe you need to fix your resume. So I'm like, okay, good. Good thing that I asked you to forget who I am.
Somebody had written like, be brutally honest, right? That's
Yeah,
one word that you have
yeah,
to use to really get the truth out of AI.
yeah. I'm like, you don't know who
Yeah.
I am. Just look at my document and tell me if I match.
Hmm. Good one. So next is something targeting juniors. So you have like over 1,600 plus mentorship sessions booked on TopMate. That's really a lot. So you're basically hearing from developers at every stage. So what's
Hmm.
the career problem that you see from 0 to 3 years of developers that talk most often about? And also like they are struggling a lot with these days.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pain points developers have is how to stay updated in the AI field, especially being a front end developer. Because as a front end developer, you don't get to build the backend API or the LLMs. You don't get to work on those like really crux or the core part of AI. So how do you stay updated in an AI field? And is front end going to be really relevant? So a lot of front end plus AI related questions. Another one of the questions that I usually get is how to move up or level up in your career, and kind of related to front end slash career, AI slash career as well. But you're working for a company for 3 years and you want to sort of figure out if this company is going to be the right fit for you in the next 2 years or for the next 2 years, but you also want to level up your skills, and there may or may not be a lot of opportunities to grow in the current company. So how do you know when to ask for help, when to get promoted, when to jump ship, and what are some skills that are missing? So those are the two most common questions that I get in my one-on-one mentorship calls.
Okay. And how do you tackle the first one? Like, is front end
Mhm.
development really going to be a big thing? Because a few days back I saw Cloud Design that's
Mhm.
beautifully designing the front end stuff. So,
Yeah.
where do you think front end development is going in terms of jobs?
Yeah, I mean, as of now, so I can't say for like 5 years, it's very hard to predict what front end will look
Yes.
like. As of now, and I think especially in this year, what we are seeing right now is that these AI tools, whether it's Claude, Cursor, like OpenAI, Gemini, they're able to build the UI pretty well. So visually looks really nice, right? Now, what I was talking about principles of software development, they really come into action when you look at the code that is being built. Technically matching the spec, it could be like 90% there. But what you're seeing is this code is not accessible. This code is not best practices. and this code is not maintainable. So oftentimes one of the things you'll see is that the components that Claude will write specifically is like really long components. They will have some comments in there to say like, this is what this component is, this is what this component is. The problem with that is it's not very testable. And then typically, like I was saying, event listeners and use effects is one of those two big things that Claude code usually has trouble with. So it's not up to best practices. So even though you've got like your first output of site done, it's not something that you can ship to production just yet. It's not something that you can ship to production, especially in a big, large-scale company. If you're building a side app, it doesn't matter, whatever, just ship dirty code, nobody cares. But if you're working at like a really big company, you want to make sure that the code is maintainable and is scalable and can stand the test of time. And the first output that AI writes is not that. So now you need a front-end engineer to read that code and fix that code. So now AI engineers front-end engineers have become these people who are not just writing components from blank slate. They may have a component already that has been generated by AI, but it's their job to make sure that it is code that is up to the standards. And that's where a front-end developer skills still comes into play. So I think people who are juniors, more like first year, second year, like people who have been working for a year or two, those people had usually been working on like smaller front-end fixes, or people who are just looking at a design and just making the component. That job is going to get graduated into people who are going to use AI to prompt that and build that component using AI, but then make sure that it is matching the best practices of their company. So I think we're still going to need front-end developers. We're going to become more general in the sense that now you're not just writing like CSS and this kind of stuff, but you're making sure that this is a more engineering heavy role, like state management. How does your data flow? How optimized is the app? Like performance optimization is going to become a huge thing. Security of your app is going to become a huge thing. Accessibility is going to become a huge thing. And testing is going to become a huge thing. Not just like writing tests, but also testing the functionality of the app. So like manual testing that app, that's going to become very important.
Okay. Great insight. I mean, it's not only like looking at one perspective of development, right? Because you're not only just now doing front end, it's like more or less becoming or graduating to a full stack to totally understand.
Yeah.
Because earlier people had to like front end had to focus only on front end, back end had to focus only on back end. Now it's like you have to graduate beyond
Yeah,
that.
no, we're going to become more generalist in terms of expertise, but we're still going to need both front end and back end knowledge. So I think we're all going to become more full stack engineers, leaning heavy on either side, which a lot of companies
Yes.
still have that role, full stack leaning heavy front end or leaning heavy back end.
How do young developers keep up with so much changes happening in AI every day? Because back in those days, you had to only focus on front end, right? If it was just front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and a framework, yes, you have a job. But it's not the same nowadays because we have AI now, agents, then skills, and MCP, and the list is going on. So is keeping up even the right goal anymore? Because for some people, it's like, I cannot hear the word AI anymore. I'm taking a break. I'm on vacation. Don't tell AI. Yeah. So what do you think?
Oh my God, seriously. Keeping up has been so hard. Honestly, like this first year since I've been in this industry, keeping up in web has been so hard. Pre-AI, it was just all of the frameworks that kept coming in, all the libraries that kept coming in, and now it's like all the AI stuff that keeps coming in. It can become so overwhelming, right? But here's
Totally.
how I would recommend. So this is why I started the newsletter, Top 5 in Front-End and AI. It was for this
Very
specific
useful.
reason. Because it is so overwhelming staying up to date in tech. And this newsletter actually has top 5 links of top 5 resources in front-end space and AI space. So I try to keep the AI bit maybe like 1 to 2 articles, and then front-end space more on that. But the idea is that one day a week you take some time to keep yourself updated, and that like maybe spend like an hour to 2 hours reading up resources, articles, newsletters, watching videos, and that is the hour where you stay yourself updated. Everything else in the week, just keep bookmarking it and then come back to it in that hour. Because if you keep like focusing on, oh my God, something new today, you're gonna feel so overwhelmed. Because here's the thing. companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google, it is their job to push AI onto you so they can keep making more money. But because of that, you're going to start feeling overwhelmed. So don't worry about all the news and updates that keep coming. Make sure that you're spending maybe like an hour to 2 hour every week at least, or every other week, whatever your schedule is like, to keep up with tech. And that's all you need. And then forget about everything else. If you don't understand, or if you didn't read the latest agent that came out or the latest Claude model that came out, it's fine. That 1 hour we'll read what we can, and then we'll store away everything else for later. So that's how I've been
Okay.
keeping up with the overwhelm. And this newsletter has been really helpful because that's when I get to read everything and I get to send it to all the 4,400 people. And that's when they can get updated as well. So, yes.
It's like somewhere you said conference driven development, right? So for
Yeah.
me, for me, maybe newsletter driven development
Newsletter
kind of.
driven development. Yes. That's how I like to do things. I like to keep something. I like to have something that will hold me accountable, and then I will study, or then how
Yes.
I will stay updated.
But yeah, thanks for really writing the newsletter. It has been helpful.
Thank you.
Yours is one of the newsletters that I read. I keep track of a few like Cassidy Williams and Viewers and Web Weekly by Stefan Udis and even Andrea Griffiths, I guess, from GitHub. She is also like publishing in the same frequency as Cassidy. And I guess Adi Osmani as well recently started a newsletter.
Yeah.
Adi Osmani is one person whom I cannot catch up because every
Mm.
time I open LinkedIn, he has a new update.
Yeah.
I've been like constantly bookmarking him for like last 2 years. Yeah, I'm watching him. I also would love to have him on the podcast, but I don't know if I'll be able to ask him the right questions because I haven't read his stuff yet.
Yeah, he publishes a lot, and he's got a ton of books as well coming out. I
Hmm.
often share his articles in the newsletter, especially in the AI section. I love the content that he puts out for sure. But man, that guy can produce stuff. Like, damn, he's
Yeah.
so fast, and I don't know when he sleeps.
Totally, like being working in Google on one time, like in such a high position, and his blog is like so detailed. The I don't know, on Substack I have to like scroll endlessly to get to the end of his article.
Yeah,
Yes, but
yeah.
good that you guys are there to really make our lives easy. To and your advice is also good, like focusing on 1 week, 1 day per week, right? To
Mhm.
totally catch up. Sometimes this is also a big problem because a lot of knowledge exists and you never know how to plan because
Mhm.
everybody is having a different lifestyle.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes. So the job market for juniors is totally brutal now.
Mhm.
So what do you think that people are doing wrong in their search that they don't even realize? For one side, I see that they are not doing anything wrong. The market is bad. But what do you feel? What is your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the job market is so bad that I don't think that it's really the people. I think it's just the economy right now, and that's true everywhere. There are some tips that I would give to people who are looking for jobs to make sure that you are staying at the top of the curve. Networking being the most important one in this stage. You cannot just submit your app through the careers page and think that a recruiter will look at it. Networking has become so much more important today because there's so many people looking for a job. And networking doesn't even have to be in-person networking. You could reach out to people on LinkedIn and send them a tailored message about the job that you're looking for. So I'll give some tips about reaching out on LinkedIn because I think a lot of people do that wrong. A lot of people will just send a request, like a connection request, and not write anything in the notes, which is extremely spammy. And honestly, if you do that to anybody, they are probably not going to accept your connection request, even if they're
Hmm.
somebody you know. I have missed so many people who have sent me a connection request and they didn't write a note. So I'm just like scrolling past all the people who sent me a request and I'm like, I missed it, right? So you definitely want to add a note. And if you're somebody who's hiring for or who's looking for a job, I would send messages to recruiters and hiring managers, especially people who have a hiring badge on their profile or who have hiring in their bio. A lot of people have written that in their bio. So definitely reach out to those people. So for example, if you're looking for a job at Claude, you can look up on Claude. You can look up the LinkedIn page on Claude and see people who work there. So you'll find like recruiters, hiring managers. A lot of them will have open like hiring badge, or a lot of them will have hiring for this role. Those are the people you can find. And then there is a posts tab where you'll see people who have posted about open roles. So you definitely want to reach out to those people, send them a connection request, write a note. If you have a LinkedIn Premium, you'll get, I think, 5 connections in mails as well, so you can use those as well. When I was job searching, I did use LinkedIn Premium a lot for using these in-mails. So LinkedIn Premium is definitely helpful. I do recommend that. It is quite expensive, so I don't know if it's affordable for everybody. But if you have the chance or the ability to use LinkedIn Premium, I highly recommend that tool. So networking to the right kind of people is important. Here's the thing, like a lot of people will send requests to anybody, like for example, a software engineer or anybody who works at, for example, Claude, and then hope that that network request goes somewhere. Software engineers are not really in the right place to get you a referral. Sometimes they will put a referral through, but they're not the right people. One thing, they're not on LinkedIn all the time, especially if they're not looking for jobs themselves. Like if I'm not looking for a job, I don't open LinkedIn. So they're not the right kind of people to reach out to. It's helpful if you know somebody yourself and letting them know and helping them refer you. That's a separate thing, but just cold networking requests to software engineers is not very successful. But the second thing is when you reach out to hiring managers and recruiters, let them know the role that you're interested in. Specifically, if there's a role that is open, share that link, that role on their careers page, from their careers page. So even if they're not the hiring manager for that role, they can still reach out to the right person within their team. And then keep it open. So you can say like, this is the role that I'm looking for. Would you be interested in referring me to this role? I can share my resume later. Or if you want to. So that way you're letting the hiring manager know exactly what you're looking for, exactly which role, and that you are open to more feedback on it, or like sending your resume afterwards. So that's a good way to approach networking. Okay. Then posts, like I said, is another one where a lot of people have posted the job that you're looking for. So make sure that you comment on that post. You want to be active on LinkedIn and you want to be like a part of the community so that people actually see you in their LinkedIn feed. You'll notice that sometimes it says like you appeared in searches this many times. That happens because you have been active in the community. So for example, if you've been posting a lot on React, like if you have, for example, if you've created a content on React and you've posted that recently, and then in the next week you've posted something else, you keep popping up more and more for React searches. So that way, it's kind of like SEO built networking, right? SEO powered networking. So that way your name pops up more, and then when a recruiter looks up for React people, they will find you more. So if you're looking for a job, make sure that you're posting content about that job too. So if you're looking for front-end job, start posting front-end content, right? If you're looking for back-end, same thing. And then post comments on people's posts as well. So be an active part of the community, and that is how you network. That's just literally all networking is. So networking has become extremely important when you're searching for a job. The other thing about jobs is resume. And I think the skills that applied earlier, which is making sure that your resume is tailored to the specific job that you're applying for, is still valid. I actually did a whole live stream with a real recruiter who reviewed people's resumes. I'm going to share that as well, so you can link that in the show comments. And it is extremely helpful in figuring out if your resume gets noticed by a recruiter and what are the things you're missing. So I'll share that right now.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing those valuable tips because you touched on different aspects on networking, and definitely I'm also going to include that link in the show notes. So is there a person or resource that genuinely changed how you think about web development? Not just taught you a skill, but shifted your whole perspective.
Yeah, I think that person is Kenzie Dotz. We talked about him briefly earlier, but one of the biggest things that I learned from him is how to approach learning a new topic. And one of the things that he does is when he's learning something, he won't just learn how it is used. For example, if you're building, let's say one of the things that I'm using or applying that knowledge right now is learning authorization, right? So when you're learning when you're learning authorization, there's a few concepts in here, which is like session token, jot. What Kent says is you don't just learn how that stuff works, like how jot works, but you also learn how to build it from scratch. And that building from scratch actually teaches you so much. So one of the things that I applied this philosophy to was learning React 19. And I not just learned like what are the new features in React 19, but I also opened the source code. And same thing with React Server Components, because oh my God, React Server Components is so hard. I opened the source code to actually understand how React Server Components works behind the hooks. I actually did a whole video talking about React to Shell exploit, and that video has received so many views, but it was so widely accepted and people loved that video. But this is how I learned it. So I learned not just how React to Shell exploit happened, which was actually the vulnerability with the React Server Components that was released, I think, earlier this year, I think. But I also learned how React Server Components works behind the scenes and actually looking at the source code of React Server Components within React. And this thinking of like learning under the hood has helped me strengthen my fundamental software engineering knowledge and my knowledge of React itself, but any concept so much that now I can understand not just how it is used and how to make it work, but how to actually build it from scratch. And like, I'm genuinely thankful for him for sharing this tip, but I think this is a great tip for anybody who's really wanting to learn anything in detail. So you can be completely confident of your skills. And this has
Awesome.
shaped the way I learn, but also the way I teach as well. So all of my videos kind of now go back into this is how it works under the hood. And that has been because of him.
Awesome. Wonderful story. And yeah, thanks to Kent as well. Been like a total inspiration. Like it's not only technical, right? He also writes about the aspects of software engineering. And it's also inspiring to hear these kind of stories. What because it's always like that, right? You see a movie, you get so inspired. Today I was re-watching The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. I don't know if you've seen
Oh,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of motivational, and when you say stories like this, okay, then I also get like so motivated to put this across my work as well.
Yeah,
So thanks for sharing.
yeah.
Awesome. So we are done with real grinding or the hard questions. It's the rapid fire. Book or blog post you give the most or like to recommend to others?
Eloquent JavaScript. Great book if you are a front-end developer. Teaches you behind the scenes. No, teaches you JavaScript concepts in detail. And I'm writing Eloquent React, which is part 2 of this series.
Oh, awesome. All the best.
Thank you.
Is this a part of You Don't Know JS series, the
No, it's
Eloquent?
a different
No, it's a
publisher.
different one.
Yeah, it's a different publisher.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Favorite tech YouTuber or YouTubers in the field of web development?
there's so many. WebDev Cody, I love him. He's awesome. Oh
Web
no,
dev
no,
coding.
sorry. WebDev Cody is awesome, but who I was thinking of was WebDev Simplified.
Uh-huh.
Kyle, I forget his last name. WebDev Simplified. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think he also, yeah, he is very inspirational. I guess he also made it to the last round of Mad CSS.
Yes.
Good one. So name three of your role models or heroes in
Mm.
tech or in general,
Oh man. Wow, this is hard.
or maybe name one. It's okay.
Can see dots.
Okay. Name three skills that coders need other than coding.
Humility, empathy, and the skill to keep learning.
Which three tools or subscriptions do you find relying yourself as a developer all time?
Subscriptions, Claude. Been paying for that for so long. As a developer,
Yes.
therapy.
You mean Headspace or
I have a
general?
different subscription.
Okay.
Yeah, any therapy would do.
Okay.
Canva.
Canva as in the development, like the UI tool, right?
The UI tool, yeah.
Okay. Um, as developers, we sit a lot. So, got a hack or habit to stay healthy?
25 minutes of Pomodoro. After 25 minutes, make sure you get up, take a walk, take a drink of water, maybe refresh your drink. If 45 minutes works for you, that's better, but 25 minutes is what works for me.
Okay. Where do you usually go to stay up to date on latest trend on web development or news?
People's newsletters. So I follow the Speak in React, JavaScript Mastery, Cassidy Williams newsletter, Josh Como's newsletter. I have a bunch of RSS feeds that actually sends me a newsletter, that actually sends me updated articles. And I built an app myself for pulling in the latest content from all of the developers and creators that I admire. And then I curate all of that into top 5 this week in front end and AI.
Oh my God, you really have built a system
Yeah, it's like
there.
a full day's worth of work. I said 2 hours earlier, but for me it's a full day's worth of work.
Okay. A developer joke that cracks people up. And for people who don't know, Shruti has also a repository on jokes, and she starts talks with a joke.
Yeah.
So, what's
Okay.
one developer joke that cracks people up?
The one that I love is how do you comfort a JavaScript bug?
Yes, I know this
You
console.
console it.
And this was also there right in front of your desk at PayPal.
Yeah. Wow. How do you know
Those.
all that? Wow. You've done your research. Damn.
Thanks. This was there on the video that I saw. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Life at PayPal, right?
and yeah, I got three other jokes which I can quickly ask. Maybe you know them already, or maybe they are new. Okay. So, two I used from Alvaro Montoro. So, how do CSS things?
Float. Float top.
Not really.
Z index.
Yeah, the index. What is CSS developer's favorite drink?
Drink. Float.
No.
Hmm. I don't know.
Root beer.
Root beer. Okay.
Root pseudo class.
Nice.
And last one. What's a CSS developer's favorite car?
Car. I don't know.
V
VW.
Volkswagen.
Nice.
Um, yeah, for people who don't know, VW is a viewport. Yeah, viewport height. Mm,
Width.
width, yeah, viewport width. The other one is VH. Right. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of jokes which I saw. I'm not like a CSS guy or something, but these are the things that I felt really nice. And
Yes.
others were like Google picking up from your own repository. So I wanted to make sure, not
Nice.
asking you
Very
the
cute.
stuff from your own. One last thing. If you would say one thing to a junior developer who's quietly scared that AI is going to make their career irrelevant, what would it be?
I can totally relate with that fear of feeling like AI will make your career irrelevant. Even as a staff engineer who's been here for 12 years, I still feel that too sometimes. So I totally understand where you're coming from. What I would say is focus on things that you can control and focus on the skills that you can learn. If you use AI as an assistant and not your primary brain, you will make sure that you keep learning and growing and you stay relevant in this ever growing field. So try to stay positive about all the new updates that are coming, but just focus on what you can control and what you can learn.
Thank you very much, sir. That's a good advice and motivational during this tough times and tough job market. And thanks for also taking the time today to be part of the show.
It's been a
And
pleasure. I painted this. So this is
okay,
actually a misty mountain with a
mountain.
forest, and this is very
Awesome.
Pacific Northwest because this is what our days look like when it's raining. And I wanted to
Okay,
paint
okay.
that as my background because I love
Yes,
mountains
yes.
and rain and the mist.
Awesome, awesome. It looks really good.
Thank
And
you.
I guess you only draw things that you have seen or the pictures from the pictures you took, right? Something
I
like
don't
that
know,
you have
like
made.
I love like reproducing I love reproducing the stuff that I feel beautiful into art, and that's where that's coming from. It's been recent though, because I am not a skilled painter. I have been just practicing more and more and become better. So I initially used to watch tutorials of Bob Ross, and I would just do those, and then slowly I picked up the skills of like drawing trees and mist and mountains, which is what front-end development is. Like, you watch somebody's tutorial, you write it, and then you learn how to like build the drop-down components. You put that drop-down component in another app, and that's how you build a new painting.
Awesome. And this also is kind of a hobby and takes your mind off things, and it's kind of a therapy as well. So
Yeah, for sure.
great hobby.
Free therapy.